Welcome to the performance series, and today we're going to be talking about abdominal development. Okay, here's a little chart here. We've got the rectus abdominis, the serratus anterior, the linea alba, the external obliques, and the umbilicus. Okay, so why do we develop our abdominals? The big one that everyone knows about, aesthetics. Okay, the other one that perhaps goes under the radar is it really helps protect the lower back. One thing I've spoke about with a lot of you guys, and I've given an example. Now you can stand up and you can try and do this. Now stand up and tense your abs as hard as you can. Now try and arch your back either forwards or backwards. It's impossible. So if we can get a better connection with our abdominals, when we are performing specific movements in the gym, or even when we are doing things at home, just by engaging that core, by bracing that core, you are much less likely to aggravate your lower back. Okay, so first of all, exercise selection now. We tend to choose our abdominal movements and target the different areas through these variations. So we've got the crunch variation, we've got the knee or leg raise, and then we've got the side plank / rotation style variations. For example, a Russian twist or a behind the back pass, where we're kind of twisting whilst we're performing the movement. We also hit our abs, which you may or may not know, in most of our lower and upper body movements, particularly our main compounds, but even things like when you're performing a single arm row. Okay, obviously you have got the dumbbell in one hand and your abdominals will be creating stability, i.e. helping you maintain a neutral spine whilst you kind of row in that single arm movement. Now, the cues we want to be thinking about, and this is a big one, okay, that pretty much, well, 99% of people won't do. Okay, when you perform a crunch or when you perform a knee raise, I want you to initiate that movement. So, i.e., bringing shoulders off the ground or bringing knees up, initiate that movement with a breath out. If you use that in your next core sessions, I'll guarantee you will get a better contraction if you do that. Okay, if you get all of the air out as you come up towards the top, it makes it easier to get a better contraction in the core. Same thing with the knee raise. Now, when performing core-based movement, particularly a crunch, the range of motion for your abs is very small. It's around 3 inches. So therefore, what we don't want to do is rush it. We want to, in fact, slow it right down. So your abs are in control of those 3 inches on the way up and these 3 inches on the way down. And if that's too easy, we can do things like adding a pause. For example, adding a pause at the top of your crunch, adding a pause at the top of your knee raise. Obviously, we can do other things, i.e. add load. So basically, the abdominals are to be treated like any other muscle if we want to develop them. So we want to progress them. So therefore, they must become accustomed to more demanding movements. So say, for example, talking about leg raises, you might start by doing a leg raise lying with your back on the ground. Then you might progress that to a dip knee raise, into a dip leg raise, into a hanging knee raise, into a hanging leg raise, into a hanging pause leg raise, and so on. Okay, so we can progress movements to make it more difficult, or we could add more time under tension. Say, for example, if you are doing one of our core circuits and each exercise is 40 seconds per movement, 20 seconds rest in between. Now, when you're just starting, when you're doing that first block, you might not be able to do it all. You might only be able to do 30 seconds per exercise in week 1. The next week, you might be able to do 35, the next week, 40. That's the progressive overload we're looking for there. And obviously, we can do things like add more load. For example, in our weighted knee up crunches, in our decline crunches, in our cable crunches. As the old saying goes, abs are made in the kitchen. Okay, they are built, better built in a calorie surplus, i.e. we need to be eating enough food for our abdominals actually to develop. And they are revealed through a calorie deficit, i.e. when we strip off the body fat. Okay, if we are doing the right things in the gym, but we aren't outside of the gym, we won't see that development. And that's why nutrition is really, really important. Okay, so what are the benefits of having bigger abdominal muscles? Okay, so the big one is particularly when you move into like a building phase, a gain phase, naturally your body fat percentage is going to creep up, okay, because you're in a calorie surplus. But if you can have thicker abs, okay, whether you're at 10% or 15%, you can still see them. So for me, year on year, obviously I always do like at least a 6-month building phase, and year on year, my abs get progressively a little bit bigger, which means my shape when I'm through my building phase, when I'm at 15% body fat, 18% body fat, for example, my shape looks much better now than it did when I first started my first building phase. Why? Because my abs are bigger and it's harder to cover them with fat. So therefore you feel in better shape regardless of body fat fluctuations. No, that's something a couple of people have asked me about before. Okay, as well as that, whether you're very developed muscularity-wise elsewhere or not, you still look athletic. So whether you are absolutely massive like Arnie or quite lean and quite kind of slim, if you've got a good set of abs, you still look absolutely class, in my opinion. Now, the common mistake, the majority of people tend to sack abdominal training off until 2 weeks before holiday when you're in a big calorie deficit because you're trying to get your body fat off, meaning you're not going to see any growth. Okay, so please, 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 please build them, train them, overload them when you're in a surplus, when you're on more food, and then you'll reveal bigger abs the next time you pull the body fat off. Okay, guys, final note. Get strong at your abdominal isolation work. Get strong at your compounds and across all your different movements. Okay, so for example, you guys doing things like leg press, any kind of squat pattern, any kind of bent over or hinge pattern. Okay, all of them. If you can get really strong at them, that's going to carry over into having thicker abs. Okay, as well as your isolation work. On top of that, as I said, make sure you eat to grow, and ultimately, let's try and build those brick abs. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Hopefully, you found that useful. Any questions? Let me know.